guest, Sister Amina, and Brother Bilal. Our discussion today is on da'wah, propagation or promulgation of the pristine message of Islam. And unfortunately, apologies, I had to interject so that we could go to break, and you were picking up on some of the points that Brother Bilal was making.
Right. As I was mentioning, we shouldn't have an assumption in our community that ulama somehow need to be foreign and have an accent and don't speak English. We all should be becoming ulama, especially our men. We women don't become ulama in the same way men do, of course. This is a responsibility for everyone, and we should expect to see ulama who are native to every culture, including all aspects of British, American, and other Western cultures where people convert to Islam. Back to the issue you were mentioning, especially about the Shi'i community versus the Sunni community, I do have to agree completely. I think our Sunni brothers and sisters are way ahead when it comes to da'wah, and it's a shame because we have the hadith, the teachings, the morals of the Ahlulbayt. We have the example of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I mean, Imam Hussein moves all sorts of people, and yet we do tend to keep it to ourselves. And my experience when I wanted to research more about the school of Ahlulbayt is oftentimes I would ask people and they wouldn't even answer my questions. They'd be like in permanent taqiyya, like, well, we can't tell you, sister, go read a book somewhere, don't ask us. We do need to get over that. I mean, there are places for taqiyya, but this is not always one of them.
Sure.
And I honestly think this has to do with our collective history as Shi'i Muslims. It is a history of a lot of oppression, a lot of suffering, and so there is, unfortunately, a lot of suspicion and other things that come from being a historically oppressed community. But there are also ways we need to try to expand out of that. And, when you said social involvement, the first thing I thought of was realizing our Islamic social values in society. And again, this comes back to community awareness. We do get a lot of top quality lectures, perhaps in the Husseiniyyahs and other places. But one of the things that really needs to be pushed in these lectures are the Islamic social values. I can't say that enough. We sometimes pick on very small details, like what color hijab is a lady wearing, where is that brother going, Ahlulbayt, we get it, people, but we've got some basic values that we don't always emphasize. And one of our most basic values is it's wajib to aid those who are being oppressed or downtrodden, and it's haram to aid oppressors. And if we do the opposite, someone is suffering and we can do something about it, because realistically we can't do something about everything, but we can. Or if we're somehow just, lazy and we want to go buy our biscuits from Mark and Spencer's today and who cares that they're, funding Israeli settlements, this is a major sin. One of the kaba'ir, the big, big sins, which is much, much worse than a lady wearing, say, a hot pink hijab or something. And not that I'm trying to, categorize sins are bad, but I'm saying we need to have our priorities right. And one of the best ways we can do da'wah is, as Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, be the silent callers to Islam. And actually get involved in social issues and social reform, for the good of society. I don't mean blowing up things. I mean working on building society for everyone, wherever we happen to live. And not just because we want to be doing da'wah and, oh, look, they're going to be CS Muslims, working on the, hurricane relief product, but because we genuinely care about our brothers and sisters in humanity, as Amir al-Mu'mineen said, in fact, not only would say. And sometimes we hear positive things. For example, a brother in the community was telling me about this program they had to have iftar with homeless people in the park. So their thought was, well, we don't want to just be sitting here and giving handouts, which, of course, I'm sure you appreciate it if you're hungry. But the example of Ahlulbayt was to sit and eat with people who were less fortunate with them. So they did this, and they kind of texted a bunch of people and told them to text them. And they said it was a very positive event. And maybe none of these people will ever become Muslims. And that's okay. You're just letting people know who you are and inviting them to what you believe. We're living our beliefs. That's the important thing.
And of course, the impression of Islam would be better due to that experience that you've just mentioned. If we could just move it on slightly, excuse me. And one of the areas that I often think about in terms of the ways in which we could give da'wah. And again, when I say give da'wah, I don't want to give yourselves, I'm sure I don't give yourselves, but our viewers the impression that it's all about trying to make everybody in the UK Muslim. As you said, it's just about making people aware of what Islam is about. But again, what about our presence in prisons? What is it that we could be doing? Because again, we are talking about the downtrodden of society, those who have been, in some cases, oppressed. Obviously, if you're in prison, normally it's because you've done something wrong, but normally a lot of the people who've done something wrong, sometimes it's because of their social or economic circumstances. And so surely this is an area that we need to be looking at. Again, not necessarily because, if we do this, we might get another 10,000 Muslims in 5 years to come or whatever, but it's because we can, help those who need help. So what can we do, or what should be done with regards to this?
Well, to be honest, I'm not from the UK, so I don't know the specifics of the prison population here and the demographics and all.
Just to tell you, I don't have the exact figures to hand, but we have something like 4 times the amount of Muslims population living in the UK are in jail.
So it sounds like you're going to be wanting to do da'wah to Muslims in prison as well as non-Muslims in prison.
Yeah, sure.
From my own frame of reference, I would point to the American model. Dawah has been a phenomenal success in American prisons. Virtually all of the Muslims in prison over there, except the ones who are arrested for being, quote, terrorists, even though, they never did anything but sit in their room at home. Leaving aside those issues there, most of the Muslims in prison converted in prison. They weren't actually arrested as Muslims. So this is very different to the situation here. And again, unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, it's not a bad thing, but our Sunni brothers and sisters have done a much better job at reaching out. If you look at ISNA, for example, which is a North American organization, they do have a plan for how to do da'wah to inmates, providing literature, trying to provide people who can speak to them, visit them, to take care of their needs after they come out of prison. That's a lot of issue for a lot of people. You don't want to be let out of prison where, here's my brother or sister, now no one wants to talk to her, helping them get settled, get married, find a job, and so forth. In the Shiite community, it does happen. I can say definitely I've worked with Islamic centers and known Muslims who did take the trouble to go and visit prisoners. I've known ulama who went to go just spend time with them, cook food for them. Even where it was allowed to provide literature. But I think when you're dealing with an institution, you need a plan. And again, it's not like we want to sort of infiltrate the world and, change it, but to reach out to people, share what we have, and say, if you'd like it, maybe it can be of assistance to you. And especially if we have people born into Islam coming to prison for actually committing crimes, not sort of innocently, so to speak, even if it's because of one's circumstances. They may be interested in this message too.
But of course, we're talking here about, I mentioned the statistic of born Muslims, but of course, when we're talking about da'wah, yes, born Muslims, but as well, non-Muslims as well.
Yeah, and as you indicated on the other show we were on, someone who's born into Islam but may not be practicing Islam is going to be in need of the same sort of services as someone who's coming to Islam in the first place.
Sure. Okay. What about people who are interested in Islam? I know you touched on it earlier on as well, but people who are interested in Islam, are Husseinias or Islamic centers, are they an appropriate place? Because I remember speaking to a brother and he was saying that, he had a friend who was really interested in Islam. I think he even converted to Islam. And because he saw some Muslims beating their chest, he then left Islam. And this left me a bit confused, a bit perplexed, because I was thinking, well, even if you don't like the beating of the chest, if you've accepted Islam, obviously you've accepted it on a logical, ideological basis, so why would something like this make you run away from Islam? However, the argument put forward by some is that if you have reverts, or people converting to Islam, they need a place to go to. And arguably, the most appropriate place for a revert isn't necessarily an established Islamic center which is catering predominantly for a particular cultural group of people.
I think I mentioned it in the previous show that in the sense that the reverts tend to be, at least in London and in the UK, from a very diverse set of backgrounds. Maybe there are ethnic groups that are strongly represented, but it is diverse. So I think the revert centre or revert type of centres would, I think, have a natural disposition to be cosmopolitan, and meaning that anybody from a member of the public, even if they were like a Sikh from a Sikh background or from whatever background, they could still, in a UK sense of the word or in a Western sense of the word, just feel pretty comfortable and be understood and maybe have that connection. Whereas as you said, some of the centres are quite cultural, and people have gone into these enclaves to kind of protect their culture and preserve their culture, so they're not exactly opening up, and many lectures are not even in English anyway. So I think just that principle that revert centre would, by definition, every lecture would be in English, and I think this is something that is definitely needed. But also in terms of the dawah, instead of maybe moving away from some of the polarity, the polemic, should I say, and the type of debate about having to redefine certain people's personality, famous people in Islamic history's personality, we don't need to discuss particularly certain individuals. The Prophet and the Imam, let their words speak. Let them speak for themselves. Tell the people what the Quran says on a particular issue. Give them the statements of the Prophet or the Imams on a particular issue, and that is sufficient. They will speak for themselves. And I think people can have a connection and be aware of, okay, is this what they represent? I didn't know this. We'll be there from a Muslim or non-Muslim background.
You've hit on a very important issue here, and that is language. We as Muslims, we are absolutely obligated to convey the message in the language of the land. If we were in Japan, I'd say most of our religious services need to be in Japanese. Yes. If we're in China, I'd say it's Chinese. We're here in Britain, it needs to be in English. And I know we have brothers and sisters who don't speak English very well. That's okay. We can offer other services. There's nothing wrong with having an Urdu lecture, an Arabic lecture. I enjoy Arabic lectures. But as far as I'm concerned, and I know some people in the community don't agree with this for their own reasons, as far as I'm concerned, every single Islamic center should prioritize religious programs in English, whether it's lectures, publications, etc. This is their responsibility.
Sister, what are you saying?
Well, I mean, as we've been saying, Islam is not a religion for an enclave, and English is a common language here. Most people do speak it to some level or another. We look at the youth, they're educated in English. They will learn Islam better in English. This is just the reality. Furthermore, we're not just talking about, us, inshallah, followers of Ahlulbayt and all of these British people out here. Maybe some of our Sunni brothers and sisters also want to come and learn something about the school of Ahlulbayt, that is to say the Shia. I'm sure you know how much trash there is out there on the internet about Shia Muslims. We have horns, we have tails, we have a different Quran, we worship the Imams, all of this just rubbish. And we can't really be countering that rubbish if we're not even offering lectures in a common language. I mean, if you got a brother, say from Egypt, he says, yeah, I want to go to the Shia mosque and learn about the Shia from themselves. And the lecture is in Urdu. I mean, you could have the most brilliant, wonderful, eloquent guy speaking up there in Urdu. It could be very useful for the community, but he's not going to get a word of it, obviously. And so this does need to be our priority. And I don't think that really matters whether it's a, quote, revert center or a, quote, non-revert center. This is where we need to go. And again, if we look in the Sunni community, I think they are much further ahead in this. They do offer religious services in English. They've got tons of books, booklets, pamphlets, and so this is something we need to be doing too.
And I think, although one point I would like to mention, just to say, because I was born and brought up here in the UK, and I converted in 1994, a couple of years after Brother Bilal here. And I would say that the situation has vastly improved. I mean, back then, I don't think I can think off the top of my head of one place that I could say offered English lectures. I'm sure there were conferences, there were seminars, and yes, in fact, there was one centre I remember that used to do a Friday night program, specifically English, but it was the English Friday night program. I mean, it was literally the English was the main word here, emphasis on the English, but. Alhamdulillah, I would say that the situation has vastly improved now, because at least, without, counting the centres, but I would say at least half of them, their main program is now in English. Their language, or the born language, or the native language, is now taking a backseat to the English language. And I have seen with my own eyes that this has had has improved the attendance of that age group that is most effective in their formative years. So I'm talking from the age of about 17, when they can actually decide for themselves whether they want to go to the Hussein or the mosque themselves or not. Because back then it was a case of you had the old men, because obviously I can't see the women's side, you had the old men, some small children, and that was it.
Youth were missing.
Nobody of my age.
But I want to say this really should be a non-issue. I hate to say it, but I think it's pathetic that we're saying the situation has improved. And when we look at the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he was in the Hijaz, that is to say what's today Saudi Arabia, he was out there speaking Arabic. You know, he wasn't in the Hijaz speaking, I don't know, Japanese. And so, you know, again, it's not like I'm trying to put other languages down. We have a very beautiful religious culture in other languages. We have a beautiful religious heritage. I enjoy going to majalis in languages other than English. But like you were kind of saying, this needs to be not the focus, because we need to focus on where we are and be present where we are.
What about the argument of, well, yes, you're right, you know, the language of the land needs to be spoken, but at the same time, you know, we can't leave our elders behind. You know, they've come from a particular part of the world, and it's not exclusive to Muslims. Even the Christians do it as well. They've come from a particular part of the world. They've settled here, you know, and this is a small element that is helping them to hold on to something that they've had in the past.
I really don't know. I really struggle to address that, in a sense of, if you come to this country, you've been here for 40 years, and you struggle to, you know, deal with English, and I'm wondering how you're carrying out your transactions or how you're interacting in society. I guess I'm not waving my finger, but I hear what you're saying, but I'm also a little troubled and a little bit confused at the same time, because, I mean, you're here, you have family here, you have children here, grandchildren here, and, I mean, what's going on? What's going on for you? When you open it up into English, it's not just to the general public, but then it opens it up to your other Muslim brothers, because if you have it in the language of your nationality, that means it excludes the other Muslims from those language groups. Whereas, you know, you open it to the general public that are not Muslim, you open it up to all the ikhwan and the sisters. So this is, it's good, it's a plus. It's not, you know, you're not losing anything. You're gaining.
And just to wrap up, sister?
Yes, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm pushing cultural superiority here. It's not as if English is somehow superior to all the other languages and we have to only speak it. We should offer religious services in languages other than English for people who require those services, whether it's counseling or books or lectures. It just shouldn't be the primary focus, and there shouldn't even be this debate about whether or not we should have English. That's a given. If people need other things, we offer those things too.
Okay. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have to end the show there. It's been an honour, and I thank you once again for joining us. I'm sure the viewers have benefited vastly from the advice and the experiences of Brother Bilal and Sister Amina. Sorry, not Sister Amina, Sister Amina. This has been Revert's World. Assalamu alaikum.